Hi, I'm Shane and welcome to a special episode of Relative Time. Now, I've been on holiday this week, but I want to take a quick break to do a follow-up video on my Vostok Amphibia. Mostly because I thought, what a more perfect location to talk about a dive watch than Paradise Island, Bahamas. Also the home to Atlantis. There are two things I want to talk about in this follow-up video. The first is that I made some minor modifications or customizations to my amphibia. The second is a report on how well the Vostok Amphibia has survived some real-life watery experiences while I was here in the Bahamas. Now, with regards to the modifications, this is less of a how-to video and more of a quick highlight, just to show how easy it is to customize. If you look, there are already a lot of great videos on how to modify your Vostok. But I did film myself doing most of the mods anyways. Although, since it was my first time trying to film something like this, my big head got in the way of a lot of it. I made 4 simple changes to my Vostok. 3 of the parts I used are stock Vostok parts I got from Marinome. The 4th was a third-party bezel I got off eBay. The first thing I did was to swap out the plastic ring which holds the movement for a metal one. Now, this was the most invasive of the 4 customizations, and honestly, I'm not really sure if there's any real benefit to it. I mostly did it because the part was only $4, and I was already ordering other stuff from Russia. Next, once I got the movement, with the new holder back in the case, I swapped the brass crown for a signed stainless steel one. Not so much of a visual change, as much as a quality improvement. Third, I swapped the stock Amphibia case back for a different one. I originally wanted an exhibition case back, but the pictures showed it being a bit taller than the stock one, and the last thing I really want to do is make this thing any taller. Not to mention, I didn't know if I added the exhibition case back, if that might actually affect the water resistance of the Amphibia. And since I was having it on a NATO anyways, I figured I'd never really see it. So I decided to go with a Scuba Dude case back. I figure, if you got a theme that works, might as well stick with it. Although, I was very tempted by the Killer Whale case back. And lastly, I changed the bezel. Now, Vostok's bezel is fairly low-tech compared to some. Basically, it's a tight metal cylinder with a metal wire giving it retention. But it works, and it makes it easy to change. On Marinome, there are a lot of Vostok bezels to choose from. But I really wanted something orange to match the Scuba Dude I have. And I found this one on eBay. It had a little bit of an orange Planet Ocean vibe going for it. In fact, while waiting at the dive shop for our scuba trip, one of the other divers looked at it kind of funny and actually asked if it was one. Now, swapping the bezel is fairly easy. Just use something flat like a knife, but be sure to protect the watch's surface so you don't scratch it up. And just push it under the bezel to pop it off. Then, make sure the new bezel has a retaining wire, or move the retaining wire from the old one to the new one. Then, you just put it on and use a little bit of force to snap it in place. So, in about 30 minutes, my Amphibia went from this to this. Now, you can't come to Atlantis and not expect to get wet, which is one of the reasons I bought and brought the Amphibia. So, I had a few days in a more controlled, chlorinated test environment. Basically, in and out of the pool, water slides, and as well as some simulated rapids, shall we say. And through all that, the Amphibia kept on ticking, and I didn't notice any problems at that point. The next day was the main event, taking it where it was destined or perhaps designed to be, on an actual dive into the ocean. I've been diving for about 10 years, but I'm not an expert or even really that fanatical about it. I usually go once, maybe twice a year, depending on if and where we happen to go on vacation. And the 2 dives I took it on this trip were by no means pushing the Vostok to its limits. In fact, by many standards, they were pretty shallow. The first dive was about 20 meters or 60 feet, and the second was probably closer to 20 feet or 7 meters. But regardless, these are real-world experiences, and in both cases, the dives lasted about an hour. Now, before I got into the water on my first dive, I did notice something that I hadn't noticed before. The top of the metal insert on the bezel seemed just a little bit loose, as in I could visually push on it and see it move. Not much, just a little bit. Now, after the first dive, the Amphibia was still running fine, but I did notice 2 things. The first, there appeared to be what I think is surface rust on the replacement crown, specifically right where the Vostok logo was. As well as I saw a little bit on the base of the crown, more near the case. But the case itself, as well as the case back, perfectly fine. Now whatever it is, it easily wiped off with my finger. The second thing was that the metal insert now seemed loose on the bottom, as well as the top. Now I had thought about taking it off at that point, but we had just arrived at our second dive site, and I already had my dive gear back on. So I thought I would risk it. You know, for science. Plus I figured if it was getting really loose, I'd manually take it off and maybe stick it in the pocket of my VCD. And that was a mistake. After less than 10 minutes underwater on my second dive, I looked down at the watch and didn't see a metal insert, just a now naked amphibia. If I hadn't been underwater, I would have had some choice words, but it's kind of hard to swear with a regulator in your mouth. So, long story short, that insert is now in the bottom of the ocean, somewhere off the coast of New Providence in the Bahamas. And the amphibia sported a little bit different look for the last few days of my vacation. On the bright side, I didn't notice any more surface rust after that second dive, and the watch itself was running perfectly fine. And it stayed that way, even after another couple days in the pool, as well as one more day of being splashed continuously by waves and chop on a fishing excursion. In the end, I can say that the amphibia itself is a tough little bugger, and it can survive your typical water recreation with no problem. However, any kind of modifications you may do might not be so lucky. Now the crown, I'm not too worried about, and as soon as I get a chance, I'll take it out and brush it out, maybe add a little bit of oil. Then, I'll just keep an eye on it. And the bezel? Well, it just looks a little naked, so I'm deciding what to do on the front long term. So I love that orange look, so I might order another replacement insert, and then look into a more waterproof method for adhering it. Although at that point, I'll probably always still worry about getting it wet. Although I could always swap the bezel back to a stainless version if I ever go diving, but that sort of defeats the whole purpose of having a watch that I don't need to worry about or baby. Now, other than going back to a more traditional Vostok metal bezel, I also had this black stainless PVD version. Although I'm not really sure about the two-tone black stainless look. But it does have lume, and since it's all stainless and no insert, I don't need to worry about it. So I'm temporarily putting this on it. So long term, I'm gonna have to think about it. But let me know in the comments which look you like the best. So thanks for watching and joining me for a taste of paradise. As always, like, comment, and subscribe. Until next time.